last episode ended at the beginning of the reign of Dom Alfonso VI, and the subsequent end of the war for the restoration of independence. This new king was, however, incapable of reigning, and his leadership was dominated by the regency of his mother, Luisa de Guzmão, and his younger brother, Infant Dom Pedro, with the latter becoming king in 1683 after his death. This king promoted the exploration of Brazil and got Portugal involved in the War of the Spanish Succession. Dom Pedro ended up dying during the war, and his son, Dom João V, the Magnanimous, became king. He was also known as the Portuguese Sun King, as a reference to the French King Louis XIV, who had massive amounts of wealth. The Portuguese king emulated this with the arrival of huge amounts of gold and diamonds from Brazil, thanks to his father's policy. In the continuation of the War of the Spanish Succession, one of his generals, António Luís de Sousa, who was in control of a joint Portuguese, Dutch and British army, conquered Madrid. Nonetheless, in the next year, the city was conquered back by the joint French and Spanish forces. With such wealth, the king also aimed to project the power of the nation by building huge architectural feats, such as the Igreja do Menino Jesus in Lisbon, the Joanina Library in the University of Coimbra, and, the most important, the Palace Monastery of Mafra, in the outskirts of Lisbon. The latter was of such magnitude that even a novel was written about its constructions by the Literature Nobel Prize winner José Saramago. After the king's death in 1750, his son, Dom José, the Reformer, came into power. However, by this time, the amount of gold and diamonds coming from Brazil decreased substantially, and as there were no big reserves since his father spent almost everything in luxury, the country was running low on money, and things only got worse with the disastrous earthquake of 1755, which destroyed Lisbon almost entirely, as well as the coastal regions of the provinces of Setúbal and Algarve. As it happened before precise values could be measured, it is estimated that the earthquake had a magnitude from 8.7 to 9 in the Richter scale. This earthquake led the Portuguese Prime Minister at the time, Sebastião José de Carvalho e Melo, also known as the Marquis of Pombal, to focus all his power on himself, rebuilding Lisbon and other cities along the coast that were destroyed, introducing many reforms and Illuminist ideas, as well as making Portugal the first European country to abolish slavery. After Dom José's death in 1777, his daughter, Dona Maria I, came into power and proved herself as a capable queen by developing the economy of the country. Nevertheless, her reign went through the Napoleonic Wars, and this drove her crazy, which was regarded in her cognomen. As such, her son assumed the regency of the country. Due to the fact that Maria was shockingly a woman, Portugal had its first consort king, Dom Pedro III, who reigned until the death of his spouse. Their son came into power after her death in 1816, although he had been a regent since 1799, making him the king that oversaw the Napoleonic Wars. As a consequence of siding with Britain, Portugal was invaded by France, which forced the court to move to Brazil between 1808 and 1821, making Rio de Janeiro the capital of the empire at the time. This was the first and only time in European history where a European court was hosted in a colony. This period saw a huge development in the colony, with numerous infrastructures being built, which raised its status from colony to kingdom within the empire. The king returned to Portugal after the Liberal Revolution, which made him implement a constitution in 1822. After his death in 1826, the crown should have passed to his eldest son, Dom Pedro IV. As he was already Emperor of Brazil and wanted to avoid the reunification of the crowns, he abdicated almost instantly in favor of his daughter, Dona Maria II, with his brother and sister as her regents. However, his brother had other plans. After deposing his sister, he crowned himself king as Dom Miguel I, usurping his niece's title and receiving the cognomen of the Absolutist. As expected, this didn't make his brother very happy. By invading in order to support his daughter's claim to the throne, he started a Portuguese civil war between the liberals and the Miguelites, which only ended with Dom Miguel I defeated and him and his family exiled from both the crown and Portugal in 1834, crowning Dona Maria II as queen. Dona Maria received the cognomen of the Good Mother due to her 11 pregnancies, with the last one killing her in 1853. The king consort during her reign was Dom Fernando II, the artist king, who ordered the construction of the Pena Palace in Sintra which is one of the 7 wonders of Portugal and a UNESCO World Heritage Site. He was also regent for his son until 1855, when the latter assumed power as Dom Pedro V. This king closely oversaw both cholera and yellow fever epidemics and helped the treatment of such diseases. As a consequence, he died young in 1861, leaving the crown to his brother, Don Luís I, the Good, who became a model king for any constitutional monarchy. With the king's death in 1889, his son, Dom Carlos I, took charge and tried both to make Portugal more prestigious in the eyes of the other European countries and to expand the kingdom's colonies in Africa with a pink map. However, the British had other plans and wanted to build a railroad from Cairo to Cape Town, and such Portuguese holding would cut right through their railroad. As a result, the British issued an ultimatum that Portugal needed to obey in order to avoid war. This led to the rise of several republican movements during his reign, and, as a way of contradicting these ideas, he allowed an authoritarian government by his prime minister. Consequently, in 1908, he was victim of a regicide alongside his son and heir to the throne, Luís Filipe, awarding him the cognomen of the Martyr. This unexpected event led the crown to his other son, Dom Manuel II, the Unfortunate, as he was severely unprepared to be a king, and the social turmoil just continued to increase. All of this led to his abduction in 1910 and subsequently proclamation of the First Portuguese Republic.